Hello out there to all of you beautiful souls who are listening today. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time here on the Maya's Dream channel. Today, I want to discuss a topic which is really close to my heart, and that is the exchange that happens between empaths and narcissists, and a little bit about why the empath and the narcissist are drawn together and drawn to each other, and what we can all do about it. So, this video today is inspired by this new series that I'm doing on my channel called Spiritually Inspired Conversations. And two of those have already been published and have been especially designed for empaths. So, the first was a conversation with my dear friend Colin Harris, who is actually a healer, and that was advice for empaths. And the second conversation was with my dear friend Zach, who's a relationship counselor and a clinician. And it was about spiritually connected friendships and sort of healthy relationships in general. And this empath narcissist topic came up in the recordings of both of those videos. And those will be linked in the description if you're interested. But I just knew in those conversations that I really needed to put out something on this topic. And I'm hoping that today's video will help to sort of demystify this phenomenon and provide a new perspective that is a little bit more soul inspired from a bit of a spiritual perspective for all of you. Of course, this is an ongoing conversation, and this topic is way too huge to address in just one video, but here's my first video on the topic. So, right, we often hear when we talk about empaths, and so many of the people who listen to my channel are empaths, and I just love that. We often hear that we attract to ourselves narcissists, or people who are a little bit more narcissistic. And over the years, as I've deepened my own spiritual work, gotten to know more people, and had my own relationships, I've come to understand that this can be a pretty complex phenomenon that happens actually due to really the way that empaths are hardwired to be able to generate and even in some cases like digest emotional energies, and the particular way that narcissistic individuals feel very vulnerable inside actually, and feel very in need of emotional energies from other people. And without even realizing it, I think, as a result of these two aspects of self, empaths and narcissists become drawn together. And I think that both initially get something out of the exchange. Let's start by talking about what empaths are and what narcissists are. And the first thing that I want to say, you guys, is that empaths are people and narcissists are people too. And these are some obvious statements, but sometimes when we're researching this phenomenon, we can forget about that. You know, empaths are people who have ups and downs, who have highs and lows, who have vulnerabilities, and who have talents, and who have hopes and dreams. And narcissists are also people who have highs and lows, who have hopes and dreams, who have gifts and talents, who have vulnerabilities, who've been hurt, who've been betrayed. All of us, all of us are people who are doing our very best on this planet to navigate what often can be very challenging experiences inside of human bodies. So, empaths are people, and narcissists are people too. Empaths are people who are currently incarnated here on the earth plane, who are having a special experience related to being able to sense and perceive emotional energies of their environment in an enhanced way. So if you're like an empath, you're probably listening to this and you're like, yeah, yes. Empaths are able to pick up on the emotional undertones that are unstated in their particular environment. So as empaths, we very typically can sense unspoken emotional energies that emanate from people around us. Very sensitive empaths can sense emotional energies even from other nonverbal living entities like animals as well. This is where you can get somebody who's like a dog whisperer, or who is able to sense what is needed in farm animals or different things like that. Some empaths are very, very attuned and able to sense emotional or spiritual energies that emanate from other living things, such as plants, crystals, and even in some very special cases, from even non physical objects, that might have some historical significance or things like that. Empowered empaths are able to not only sense emotional energies and perceive emotional energies that are unstated at a much higher level than the average person, but a very sensitive and empowered empath is also able to generate emotional energy fields as well. And this is definitely the case, like for someone like myself, or like Colin, or like Zach, who I mentioned here at the beginning of this talk. So many of us actually like come in here onto the planet to do the best we can to sort of practice and cultivate our own soul sensibilities and learn and grow, but also to help other people along the way. So some people who are empaths, and we are also experiencing ourselves through being of service to other people and helping or healing other people, we actually have these abilities to provide like healing or comfort through what many of us will refer to as like holding space for another person, which is basically like creating around us an aura, a felt aura of love and connection, that can be perceived by another individual who is in need of that feeling of love, connection, or safety at any given time. So empaths are receivers basically for emotional information which is available in the environment, and an empowered empath, and I hope that many of you are in the process of becoming more empowered in your gifts, is also someone who potentially has the ability to generate emotional energy at a much higher level. So obviously all human beings are generators of emotional energy. Empaths who are very skilled or practiced in their gifts can generate emotional energies that can be felt, and actually have a sort of healing impact on others. So fundamentally, an empath is an emotional energy worker, and empaths often identify in some way with being here to help make the world a little bit of a better place, a little bit of a brighter place, a little bit of a more loving or joyful place, a place that feels a little bit safer or a little bit better. And usually, empaths have inside of them this sense of, at one sense, like it can be a little bit of an aversion to the outside world because there's a lot of like harsh energies, like here in the earth plane, that we encounter, but also the empath has within themselves this desire to help in some way. It's like, oh, there's so much suffering here on the planet, like there's so much destruction, there's so much pain. I feel often, perhaps too small as one individual to change the whole world, but maybe I can help in some way. So that's a little bit about the empath. Okay? The empath is a person who has a special ability to be able to perceive and generate emotional energies. Yes? Okay? Now remember, when we talk about the empath or we talk about the narcissist, we're talking about regular people walking around in the world. So an empath is found in about 1 out of every 5 individuals. Okay? Okay, so that's a little about the empath. Now let's talk a little bit about a person who is a narcissist. And in today's video, I do want to hold a compassionate space around those who have, through their experience, become narcissistic. Okay? This is not to say that narcissistic individuals should not be held accountable for harming or hurting others, though, because they absolutely should. However, it is an acknowledgement that a person actually, it is my sense that a person can actually be quite narcissistic and at the same time be suffering hugely within themselves and at the same time be very unaware of how their behavior and quest to feel better is impacting those around them. Okay? So think of it like this. An empath is somebody who has a very special ability to be able to sense the emotional energies that surround another person. Someone that we may identify as a narcissist is someone who has a very special sensitivity, often to their own emotional processes. So, whereas an empath is very aware, say, for example, of the sufferings of another person or the sufferings of those around them, the narcissist may be very aware of the suffering or the joy or whatever their own experiences of themselves. They're very aware of their own process, often in a way that feels quite uncomfortable and very difficult to cope with. So, core to the narcissistic experience is a difficulty in regulating their own emotions. So, if we're not highly sensitive and we just look at a narcissist from the outside, often the narcissist can look on the outside like somebody who has it all together, right? It depends, but often a narcissistic individual on the outside looks like someone who might be very, very highly attractive. Generally, this is part of their experience, and we'll talk in a second about why that is. But often they can have the best, haircut, beautiful jewelry, beautiful accessories, wonderful clothes. They might have a fantastic car. They might have a great job title. There's a few different ways narcissists can present, but this is one of the ways narcissists can present. So on the outside, it looks like the person is thriving, but actually, on the inside of a narcissist is someone who is suffering immensely. Somehow along the way, this could be related to various factors, but someone who has become narcissistic has generally become that way as a result of having a psychological need to feel very special in order to feel like they are worthy or that they matter. And all of us, of course, on some level, do have a psychological need to feel special. Most of us who are healthy and well adjusted have found a way to fulfill this need within our own self. So I think a healthy way to approach the world is acknowledging, yes, like I am special. And I think many of us are aware of, like, okay, here are some of the characteristics or talents or gifts or things that make me special. And then here are some of the talents or gifts or characteristic that make my friend special, or that also make my friend special or my mom special, or all these different things. It's like I'm special, yes, and so are you, and so is everyone. For a person who is very narcissistic, there's almost this fear. And you guys, to be honest, I'm a little bit telepathic. So sometimes I can actually like plug into the inner worlds of others, and I'm trying to dictate to you guys from that place today. So like within the inner world of a narcissist is almost this like panic. I don't know if anybody here listening today has ever had like a panic attack. I personally have not, but I almost have like experienced it like by proxy. So there's almost like this panic energy, like this embodied, unsettled panic energy of what if I am not valid? What if I am not more special than another person? What if I am less than? And it's a very real, very scary feeling to someone who is presenting in a narcissistic way. There are a couple different pathways, I think, for people who become narcissistic, and this is something to probably ask somebody who has professionally studied this phenomenon and is highly trained. However, it is my sense that like sometimes a person can become narcissistic because they fundamentally were raised to believe that they were better than or more special uh, than others. So it can actually, narcissistic tendencies can be born in one sense from a primary caregiver or parent who tells the child in some way, gives them the sense. And this can happen in a subtle way. It doesn't always happen directly through language, but they get the sense you are the most special little boy or little girl, or the most beautiful, the most talented, the most gifted in the whole world. You are the very best. You are the most, you know? And that often can come from or be born from love. It's like, oh, that mom just really loved her son or loved her daughter, and that absolutely can be true. However, when that child leaves the home and they interact with other children and they find that, okay, perhaps maybe they're not the most beautiful. They're presented with, say, for example, of another very beautiful child or another child who has a great musical talent or artistic talent or something like that. They begin to panic inside. And they say, oh, no, 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 but mom said I was the best. Mom said I was the most beautiful. Mom said I was the most talented. And they have a huge difficulty coping, and their life becomes about trying to validate that what the mother said or the father said is actually true, because their self-worth was based on believing that they were the most special. Okay, fundamentally narcissism is a bit of a confusion about specialness, and unfortunately, it is born from tremendous suffering, because someone who is a narcissist actually has the experience of needing to continuously have their specialness validated from the outside. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment. So, what I just described there was a little bit about one possible way that one type of narcissist could develop or be created. And that would typically result in someone, it depends, but it could result in somebody who has the archetype of what we would describe as sort of grandiose narcissism, okay? And again, remember, these are people. These are human beings on the planet. I say that just because there's so many videos on narcissists, and there's a few on empaths and narcissists, and it's a fine line. Like, often we can villainize the person who's the narcissist. We can do this with empaths as well, and we like mystify them as being some otherworldly like type of, psychic person and stuff like that. And in some ways, these things are true, but just remember, these are real human beings that we're really going to encounter in everyday life on Earth, okay? But so, like, a grandiose narcissist is generally somebody grand, right? They're grand in their presentation. This is somebody who may have very little issue, if any issue at all, walking in a room and taking up space. These are typically people who are going to be quite verbal and demonstrative and say to you it either with words or sometimes directly, like they're actually going to say like, look at me, I'm the best, like, and basically what they are doing is they're seeking validation of their specialness directly. Okay? Directly, they're hoping that they're going to get applause. They're hoping that they're going to get accolades. They're hoping that you're going to look at them, and through you looking at them, through you taking interest, through you clapping, through you reflecting back to that person, yes, you are special. Yes, you are the best. They feel okay inside. Okay? Because remember, their greatest fear is that they're not. Their greatest they got a misunderstanding very early in life that their survival in life is dependent on being special, more special than others, and life presented them with some possible evidence that this might not be true, which caused them to panic inside, and now their life is this continuous attempt to prove to themselves that that understanding about themselves, about being extra special, is in fact true. Okay, so that's kind of whether it's somebody who is an extroverted, grandiose narcissist or someone who's a little bit more of an introverted narcissist, fundamentally, this is their inner world experience as best as I understand it at this time, okay? So, within the narcissist is the need to have their specialness proven by others on almost a continual basis, which is absolutely horrific for the narcissist. And when we look at them on the outside, a lot of times, and we see often how attractive they are, everything that they have, because they usually surround themselves with superficial symbols of specialness, because this actually helps them in their quest for validation. So, like, for a narcissist, it's very worthwhile for that person to get to purchase, for example, a very expensive like Mercedes or something like that. Because if they do, often when they park that car or, they're driving around, they'll actually get validations of their specialness. They'll get that reflected. And for them, it's not about the Mercedes or, the Rolex watch or whatever else. It's about the reflections of their specialness. And it's absolutely horrific inside the world of a narcissist because they are unable to validate themselves, and they do not have an intrinsic sense of self-worth. And I would guess that they're probably not particularly well connected to their soul or to spirit or to their guides or to a higher power. Although there is a particular type of narcissist who pretends to be as a way of generating their specialness, but I'm guessing that they're not particularly well connected because when we are in our heart and very well connected to a higher power, we usually have a very, very felt sense of like unconditional love within ourselves. I'm very blessed to have experienced it like many times that we don't even need any external validation of this. Like it's like so wonderful, and I wish for everyone the feeling of genuine, at least once in life, like the real feeling of the love of one's guides or a higher power, because it's so healing. So I just talked for a moment about the quest for specialness in a grandiose narcissist, but I want to talk for a moment about another type of narcissist to which empaths are very, very vulnerable. Okay, keyword vulnerable. Um, because I think so many empaths are, we need to give ourselves like a little bit more credit. Like a lot of empaths are very, very intelligent and well meaning and well studied. And I don't ever want an empath to feel like they're not smart because they were tricked by a narcissist or they didn't recognize the characteristics of a narcissist that came in their life or things like that. Narcissism is very, very nuanced. It's very, very complex, and there's many presentations. Okay. So we generally think of that grandiose presentation, that person who is unabashed in their quest for validation and specialness. However, there is another very, very common presentation for narcissism that is much less talked about. And this one is really the more introverted presentation. However, it's born from the same place, which is the place to it's that space of needing to feel special in order to regulate their emotions and psychological wellness, and needing a continuous validation of the specialness from the external world. So, what we need to understand about narcissism is that the quest for specialness can be fulfilled in many different ways. Okay? And it's really about feeling special, but it's not necessarily about feeling special for one particular reason. Okay? So, what we find in someone who is a vulnerable narcissist or a more introverted narcissist is actually often an individual whose quest to be validated in their specialness comes from their personal suffering. So there's the narcissist who wants to be validated in their specialness because of their attractiveness, their amazing job, their amazing car, their artistic talents, or all these different things. There's many, many pathways to specialness, okay? Another pathway to feeling special or differentiating oneself from others is also feeling special because of suffering the most. Okay, this is the typical presentation of somebody who is a vulnerable or introverted type of narcissist. The thought patterns and words and actions emanating from this person is something along the lines of feel sorry for me because my life has been the most difficult and I have suffered the most. And empaths are particularly vulnerable to the vulnerable narcissist because this type of narcissist, again, they're suffering hugely inside. And if they go even a few hours without in some way having reflected back to them their own personal specialness, they feel absolutely panicked and unsure of their existence and validity. So it's pretty difficult inside the world of somebody who is a vulnerable narcissist. They're basically a drug addict, and the drug is empathy, attention, and validation. A validation of their specialness is like a drug. So they're living life going from one place to the next place to the next place in this quest to have their specialness, their identity, their sense of existence validated. And it's a very difficult life experience. You guys, imagine if you were having this experience. Imagine if the first kind of thought in your mind when you woke up is like, who can help me to know that I really am special and I really am better than others. And so the first thing that you do when you wake up is like text somebody and be like, you really think I'm talented, right? Like I'm the best artist you know, right? They're going from one high to the next high. So they get a high when through some means or another, someone validates their existence and gives them attention. However, because they're not able to sustain that and regulate their own emotions within themselves very well, that only lasts like a little while, and then they need another hit, which comes from usually another person who, in some way, validates their particular specialness. Which, in the case of somebody who is more of this vulnerable type of narcissist, the specialness is born from their particular pain. Okay? So, empaths are very susceptible to somebody who is a vulnerable narcissist because we described how a grandiose narcissist might actually get up on a stage and do a little dance or a little show or something like that because they want the applause, which fundamentally is a validation of their specialness, right? those can be a little bit more easy to spot. Or they might just walk in the room and they might just say to you, and I think all of us can probably think of some examples, like in public figures who are this way. They might just say to you, I know the most. I'm the best. I have the best talent at this. I'm the smartest. Look at me. Give me your attention. Those can be pretty easy to spot. In some ways, the vulnerable narcissist is a little bit more sophisticated in their approach. Often, there are people who, in the right context, will actually try to generate attention in that grandiose way, if given the opportunity. However, they may not have succeeded, so they developed other means instead. Sometimes that's the case. But given the right environment, they'll try to get attention that way, but often it didn't work. So they developed a new way. And this new way is fundamentally usually born from a story of suffering. So essentially, the underwritten in all of it is this dialogue of like, I am special because I have suffered the most. And fundamentally, they feel incredibly unsure of themselves and tremendously vulnerable, and they need that continual validation that something about them does stand out and they are special in their own way because they don't have this within their heart. So often these people can actually present with a very much like a sob story. And often they will present with this very early on. So they may come to you telling a story of their tremendous sufferings. Maybe they'll tell you that they, through something outside of themselves, they suffered a horrific fate. Sometimes these stories are based on truth. Sometimes they're completely fabrications. But very early on, typically like in an exchange with you, a covert narcissist will tell a sob story. Sometimes they will actually sob. Sometimes, so for an empath, this is just completely um, heart opening, actually, depending on to what extent we're actually sensing the authenticity of this individual. But typically, like a covert narcissist will present to an empath with this horrible life story of all these sufferings that they have experienced. It's, who knows what they might even say. Oh, I grew up poor and in an abusive household, and my mom worked really, really hard, but she just wasn't able to take care of me, and I didn't have what I needed, and blah bitty blah bitty blah blah blah. They'll tell you like of all these hopes and dreams in life and how they did their very, very best, but it never worked out for them. Life never does. Blah 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 blah. And what they're hoping is that you're going to reach out your hand to them and say, oh, I'm so, so sorry. I can't believe this has happened to you. You are so special. You are so kind. You deserve so much better. You're one of the nicest, best people I've ever met in my life. And I want to help you. And through hearing those things, that covert narcissist becomes validated, and they receive what they need, which is fundamentally attention that validates their existence as a special human being. Okay, so that's like the first sort of presentation of a covert narcissist typically. Um, if you first meet somebody and they're immediately presenting to you or very early on a story like that of their suffering and looking for you to reflect back to them their suffering, that's a red flag. Likewise, if you first meet someone and your first conversation with that person is entirely about how amazing they are and their talents and gifts and like why they're special, more special than everyone else, that's a red flag too. Likewise, if you meet somebody and their dialogue is all about how they know the most and have the most knowledge and it's better than anybody else or it's more than anybody else, that is a red flag too. In general, if very early on, like when you meet a new person, They're presenting in a way that says, with energy or words, in some way or another, that says, I am unique and special beyond everyone else. That is a red flag. That is a red flag for narcissism in its many masks and guises, okay? Someone who is very empathetic is able to sense quite immediately the secret suffering of the narcissist, including the underlying vulnerability. An empath is able to understand that this person in front of them is seeking validation. And I think empaths are particularly drawn in some cases to the narcissists who are failing in their quest, actually, because there's nothing quite like seeing someone walk in a room and be looking in every corner for validation and not getting their needs fulfilled. So, a really sensitive and aware empath is going to have a difficult time being in the presence of a narcissist and not validating that person's specialness, because a very sensitive empath, especially someone who's more of like a physical empath, which I am, I actually feel the inner states of others in my own physical body. They're going to feel how uncomfortable that narcissist is, because fundamentally, you guys, the narcissist is almost continuously dysregulated and often quite panicked, because without an external person validating their specialness, they fear that they are worthless. Okay. So they're having quite intense experiences of emotional dysregulation. And the empath is the expert at bringing calm and love and harmony to another person. So, as you can imagine, these two, the empath and the narcissist, are drawn together because they both are desiring a feeling state that in some way they believe the other person might be able to offer. I am unsure, but I think that narcissists might have an ability to be able to somehow like seek out or recognize an empath. They have the ability to be able to perceive who might best fulfill their need to feel special. And so they're drawn to the empath. And the empath is able to sense everyone and everybody's inner needs, including just regular people who are neither empathetic nor narcissistic. However, a very gifted empath is extra able to sense the needs of the narcissist, because the dysregulated emotional state of the narcissist is immensely palpable. It's not too bad if you see like a narcissist come in a room seeking validation and they immediately get that validation, because in that case, usually not too much harm is done. For that time, then the narcissist feels okay, and a lot of times the audience of the narcissist is humored in some way or something like that. So generally the emotional tone in the room is okay. However, if a narcissist walks in a room, say for example it's one of these vulnerable narcissists, so they walk in the room with their shoulders slumped down, staring at the corner of the room, sighing. What they want is for somebody to come to them, put their arm around them, and say, "Oh, honey, what's wrong? Did you have a bad day?" or something like that. And because in doing so, that person receives the validation of, aha, I matter, I'm special, my sufferings make me valid as a human, right? But there's nothing quite like being an empath in a room and seeing a covert narcissist come in the room and start acting that way and seeing nobody come up to them, okay? Maybe they're staring at their shoes, they might be tapping their foot, and as no one comes up to them, they become more demonstrative. They might start sighing more heavily. Oh, nobody cares about me. They might start fake crying. They're actually like, it's crazy. Like they're putting on these huge emotional displays to try to get their needs met. And the empath is 5 times, 10 times, 100 times more sensitive to those emotional displays. So it actually can be very difficult for an empath not to go to the narcissist and give them what they need, because there's this huge awareness of like what the narcissist needs, and a discomfort, because as that covert narcissist in this case becomes, and it could just as easily happen with a grandiose narcissist who's, screaming from the rooftops in all their different ways that they're the most attractive and special or whatever else. But when the narcissist is not being validated in their specialness, the dis-ease, like you could cut it with a knife in a room with an empath and a narcissist. And the empath has a very difficult time holding that energy in their fields. The empath fundamentally is always in a quest to help create harmony and healing in any environment. And in the presence of a narcissist, there's a huge need to create that harmony and smooth everything out and transmute everything like back to love and stuff like that. And if it's a group experience, right, the empath may be able to resist. Hopefully, other people will validate the narcissist, or the narcissist will go away or something like that. But in a one-on-one exchange, it's very difficult for an empath to resist uh, fulfilling the need of the narcissist, because the need is so strongly felt and so uncomfortable. Because why? Because the narcissist feels horrible inside. And unlike the average person who might be fooled by the lavish display of the narcissist, whether it's a lavish display of grandiosity or vulnerability, as someone who's not an empath can't really sense what lies below that, but the empath knows. The empath can feel the tumultuous inner world of the narcissist. So this is why empaths and narcissists are drawn together. From the narcissistic viewpoint, and again, I want to state these are real people that we really are going to encounter in daily life. If we start to think of these, the empath and the narcissist, as caricatures, then we're not really benefiting from the time of reflection on this theme. Because the reality is narcissists are real people walking around in the world, and empaths are real people walking around in the world. And we need to begin to think of them as like real people in order to have a healthier life experience. So if you're a narcissist, you are on a continual quest to have your specialness validated. And I can only imagine that this quest must be similar to like the quest that we're all on for food, because I feel like it's like that. It's like, okay, you have breakfast and it definitely fills your belly for a little while, but then you get hungry again and you need more food at lunch. Some people even need snacks in between and stuff, depending on your appetites. So a narcissist has these appetites for specialness, for a feeling of specialness that only comes from the outside, and I think it's the type of I think it's like the equivalent of how some people are like on diets and they like eat 6 times a day or something like that. I think it's like that, like for a narcissist. And they are constantly looking for people and experiences that fill up their feeling of specialness. And when they meet this warm-hearted, like loving empath who has this special ability to hold space and create an aura of love around them and make them feel incredibly seen, that feels so good to them. That's like suddenly arriving at a buffet restaurant with all of your most favorite foods. It just feels so good. It's like, like if it's a really sensitive, really gifted empath, it's like, oh, I have been searching my whole life for someone who truly recognizes and can validate how special I really am continuously. And they are just um, delighted to have found this supply of this energy that they are unable to generate within themselves. Because again, the narcissist, despite their dialogue suggesting that they know that they are special, they actually don't really believe that unless it's continuously validated from others. So without somebody constantly there saying through words or actions that they matter. Their greatest fear is they don't, you know. The empath usually is very patient and kind and thoughtful in fulfilling the needs of the narcissist over and over again. And that's particularly true with this covert type of narcissist because it takes time to recognize the patterns in another human being. And for an empath, if you encounter someone that you're meeting in the world and that person is down, your first assumption is going to be if you are okay within yourself and you're stable, it's like, well, let me do what I can to help this person. They're probably just in a down time. Because we all face down times, yes? Like everybody does. You guys will know, like, I'm also like, in addition to being a psychic and other things, I'm also an astrologer. So it's like, oh no, maybe this person is having a Saturn transit or a Pluto transit or something. You know, they're in a down time. Let me lift them up. The covert narcissist is always in a down time. So they cannot be lifted up because their entire life quest is to be the most down. They receive what they need to be psychologically, quote, well as they can be through the experience of suffering the most. So no matter how much you give to them, they will not ever be in an uptime. Their entire sense of identity is built around being in a downtime continuously. So, in particular, I feel that the covert narcissist and empath is a dynamic which empaths are especially sort of sensitive to. Because we have within ourselves this very strong desire to create harmony, to create love, and to help those who are suffering. And the covert narcissist presents as somebody who is continuously suffering. And it can take a very long time, especially depending on how determined like an empath is and how much time that they have and how much they care and how much they love the covert narcissist or feel that they do. They'll often communicate or act in a way that makes the empath believe that they're just on the verge of getting better or feeling better in order to extend the dynamic as long as possible. Because again, they have this need for supplies of certain attention and emotional energy. And the empath is much better at creating these fields of emotional energy that feel fulfilling to them. So they have every reason to extend for as long as possible the relationship and dynamic with the empath. And this is where, over time, we can see an empath whose life force energy becomes completely drained. Eventually, the empath may become very, very sick. Eventually, the empath may become very, very poor, like even financially poor. They're giving to others. They're giving to this person who's a black hole. And in the talk that I just did with my friend Zach, he talked about this phenomenon as like moths to the flame. And narcissists are these moths drawn to the light of the empath, not realizing that they themselves could create their own light. They have this like misunderstanding that like the light is only outside of themselves and they must go outside of themselves to get it. For an empath, we need to ensure that our relationships are mutual. Often an empath is a giver by nature often and takes a lot of joy in helping others. But if an empath is continuously giving to others or putting another person first, they eventually will become so depleted that, right, like their own spirituality, their own creativity, their own ability to be generators of light is actually affected in a very negative way. As empaths, it's important to be very vigilant to the mutuality of our close relationships and understand that in most cases, most empaths will probably attract to themselves other human beings who are experiencing the world through the lens of narcissism at various different points in their life. And I think for an empath, it can be very hard because often we are truly desiring to have mutual, loving, harmonious exchanges with those around us. And we're hoping, like, okay, I'll be here for this person and I'll give them love, I'll give them attention, I'll validate their specialness or whatever else. And then in a healthy relationship, if the empath does that, the person that they're interacting with will do the same in return. It's like, I'm here for you and you're here for me. And through that, there's a mutuality and a balanced exchange of energy that feeds both people. Both people become stronger, both people become more able to cope, and both people really can light up the world. That's a healthy relationship. Everyone needs other people. All of us are, as humans in this life, are social creatures, and we all need another person to help, like soothe us and love us and comfort us in times of need and things like that throughout our life. But most of us, when another person is not there, have the ability to create peace like within ourselves or connect with a higher power or soothe ourselves in some way. And most of us know many ways to do this. When we're feeling like a little bit down, maybe we can lift ourselves up through meditation or through prayer or through music or through creativity or through exercise or like all of these different ways. And we know that our life matters. The narcissist is less able to do this. They're less able to get that deep fulfillment and love from life. This can be difficult for an empath to recognize. Through the best of intentions, the empath can end up becoming the supplier of the validation of specialness for many narcissists that surround them in their life. I feel sad as I say that for empaths because not only can an empath's life force energy become very depleted by one or more narcissists who so happen to be surrounding them in life, an empath can become so depleted that they can develop depression or even serious life-threatening illnesses. What is sad in addition to that is that because the narcissist has not learned to fill their own energy reserves, generate their own light, fill their own cup, however you want to think about it, they're like a black hole for energy. So what ends up happening is the narcissist is taking all the empath's energy that otherwise could be going to healthy people. If an empath is found in 1 out of every 5 individuals, say for example, and a narcissist is also found in 1 out of every 5 individuals, for example, that would mean that 3 out of every 5 individuals are regular, healthy, wonderful souls and people on the planet. And so for a regular, healthy person, they experience ups and downs. And if an empath, gives them extra special attention at a certain time, that will actually like bolster them, and then they'll be able to get back on their feet and go live their life and do good and grow and evolve. And empaths are really here to help regular, healthy individuals who are in a downtime to get back up on their feet. In a way, I think that the empath and the narcissist have something to teach one another. The empath can teach the narcissist, in an ideal circumstance, the empath would teach the narcissist that there's tremendous joy and fulfillment in uplifting another. Essentially, the empath could teach the narcissist the joy of being of service, and that could really help to heal the narcissist if it worked. Likewise, the narcissist can teach the empath that your needs matter, that before you can help others, you first must build up yourself and take care of yourself. So in a way, the narcissist is there to teach the empath, you are special. And the empath is there to teach the narcissist, others are special too. So with that, I hope you guys have all enjoyed my first video on the empath narcissist connection and attraction to one another and energetic exchange. If you're interested in learning more about healthy relationships or empathy, like I said, I'll link some recent videos I've made in the description below where you can learn more. And yeah, I'd like to, when the time is right and the stars align, I'd like to continue this conversation on empaths and narcissists. So if you have ideas, you have questions, please put them in the comments below. Thank you all for spending this time with me today. Thank you for listening. Many blessings to all of you, and namaste.